going to be a fall of third vaccine shots in America. Biden again defending his Afghanistan policy, and the first polling on the issue is starting to trickle in here. Plus, today in baby news, ScarJo and ScarJo's husband have a baby boy, and his name is Thursday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for August 19th. I am Carlo Versano here once again with Baker Machado. Baker.
Happy Thursday, Carlo. Coming live from the Panic Room in Long Island. Carlo, do you feel like, I saw this tweet the other day, that the month of August feels like the Sunday Scaries every single day for the month of August?
Yes.
That's how we're all basically feeling. It's like a Sunday every day.
There is sort of a weird, there's a very weird vibe about this August in particular and this summer in particular, as I've said. But I've also always said that August is just the dumbest month. It's when you get the dumbest people doing the dumbest things. And we tend to be seeing that again this year. And by the way, once again, I did not get to my emails yesterday. The problem when you don't.
You have such a problem with this.
The problem when you don't get to your emails, Baker, is that they don't magically disappear.
No.
In fact, the opposite happens. You just get more of them.
Oh,
right? It's an entire cycle.
So what's so funny about you saying this, because I, as a Virgo, I have crazy anxiety and OCD that if I can't have like that bubble on my iPhone where there's the messages that were like how many you have coming up or whatever. I can't, and it has to be, I have to have it at 0. Like I can't, like it just gives me too much anxiety. So the fact that like you haven't even looked at these emails yet would be killing me on the inside.
I wish I was like that. I really do. But no, I'm the opposite. And I let it go. And then by the end of the week, I'm like, oh, I really have to start tackling this. And then I'm just like, you know what? I would rather just throw this laptop and iPhone into the ocean and just sort of walk into the woods.
By the way, one thing I would like to say, and I have not experienced this with any other Cheddar programming we have, the Need to Know community. My God, they are amazing. Really dedicated listeners. I am really impressed with the Need to Know family
I know.
here.
Yeah, I love them. And that's also, I feel bad because most of our emails come from listeners. So I
Right.
like to reply to them. So anyway, long story short, I'm getting to your emails today. By hook or by crook,
I can't
you're
wait.
getting a response today.
I can't wait to see the update on this tomorrow morning on the pod. So, Carlo, let's dive into the news because there is a lot to get to on this Thursday morning. And as expected, the White House officially is recommending that vaccinated Americans get booster shots 8 months after their second dose. That's going to start on September the 20th. Now, the recommendation steps on that of the World Health Organization. They've been calling for a moratorium on booster shots at least until the end of next month. This is so low-income countries like in Africa can get more supply before more high-income countries like the U.S. start topping off their populations. Now, the administration also making employee vaccination a condition now for any nursing home that takes federal funding like Medicaid or Medicare. This is the first time President Biden has threatened to withhold federal money to get more people vaccinated here, Carlo.
The idea of working in a nursing home and not being vaccinated against COVID, I really cannot. I can't. Who is that person?
I'm with you.
I would like to talk to that person if you're out there because it's the most irresponsible thing you could possibly do, at least right now. The boosters are happening as we expected because I think what's happening here is it's becoming clear that the vaccine efficacy is starting to wane. And that was going to be the case, so I don't think anybody should freak out about it. There's a lot of new data coming in suggesting that whether it's because of the intensity of this Delta variant or just because of the elapsed time since people got their first shots, or more likely than not, some combination of the two, you're starting to see more of these breakthrough cases. And again, vaccines are still the best at keeping you out of the hospital. That's going to continue to be the case, but you're getting more of these breakthroughs. So the intention of the booster policy here is to sort of nip that in the bud. So I get why it's needed, and we're doing it because we can. We bought up enough of the supply of Pfizer and Moderna so that we could do this. But just remember, 16% of the global population is fully vaccinated against COVID.
Still very, very small.
Yeah, in low-income countries, the average number, number is about 1 to 2%.
Yeah.
So, we just have to collectively realize, I'll say it again, that COVID, to the extent that COVID is ever going to be over, it's never going to be over anywhere until it's over everywhere, or not over everywhere, but contained everywhere. And the only way for that to happen is to get more of these vaccines into the hands of people who need them and the infrastructure for them to distribute them. So again, in the past I've said like we should be airdropping these vaccines into the countries that ask for them. We got to cut the red tape. We have got to get more of these vaccines out there. Otherwise, we're going to see more of what we're seeing here. And by the way, on that note, this is just crossing the wire a few minutes ago. Alabama now officially out of ICU beds.
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah, that's a sign of things to come.
Talking about the waning efficacy of these vaccines, I think almost now a perfect case study and example is what's happening with the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott was vaccinated in December of last year before Christmas, and he obviously, as we saw this week, tested positive for the virus. Mm-hmm. So that gives you sort of an indication that the efficacy starts to wane about 8 months after you've taken your first shot, which is kind of lining up to what we've seen with Pfizer, who had submitted some clinical data to the FDA, effectively saying that some of their vaccines started to have about a 50% efficacy 6 to 8 months after your second dose of the shot. So this gives every indication to those that wanted to get the booster shots that were thinking, how long am I safe from all of this? So again, for those of me who are like crazy about this and want to get these booster shots, and by the way, my Excelsior Pass here in New York says that my vaccine expires in October. So, of course, like I'm thinking nonstop about what I'm going to be doing after all of this. We should also note, Carlo, the New York Times says about 800 people died yesterday from COVID, almost half of those coming from literally just 2 states, that being Florida and Texas right now.
Yeah, and Fauci, I believe, said yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he said that when you get your booster, you should at least attempt to get the vaccine that you got originally.
Yes,
right?
that so lines up with what I've heard too. So yeah, they don't want. So the big question though is what if you were a Johnson & Johnson recipient, and this is what they're trying to figure out what you do if you got that single dose of the Johnson & Johnson. Do you get another dose of Johnson & Johnson? But so far the reporting and the news that's lining up is stick with the original vaccine that you got before. So if you got Pfizer, get it again. They don't want to see you mix and match, just because they don't know the clinical data on how well protected you are just yet at this moment.
Right.
Carlo, let's switch to international news and let's talk about the latest in Afghanistan. The Taliban has declared that country will hereby now be known as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The official name that the group used during its brutal rule back in the 1990s was that same one. The Taliban forces responded to the first street protest also against their government with violence, beating and shooting demonstrators and undercutting their promises that they would be a kinder, gentler, more Taliban this time around. Meanwhile, the exiled former president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, has turned up at the UAE. This after he fled Kabul, reportedly carrying bags filled with $169 million in U.S. currency. Now, Ghani is said that he fled to avoid being hanged. He did tell reporters, though, he would go back to Afghanistan, but he didn't say when he would be going back to Afghanistan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe that like a summer vacation a few years down the road.
Yeah, I don't think so. Hey, look, if you've got, hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen opium money that you need to stash in a hurry, that's kind of what these like petrostates like the UAE and the Gulf are for, right? So, hey, I mean, that's, good for him, I guess. No, I'm just kidding there. This guy is a total coward, and he's emblematic just of the entire problem with this war from the get-go. Russ Douthat, the columnist for the New York Times, he had a tweet the other day that I thought it was actually very well sort of phrased. It sort of has been what we're talking about. And he tweeted, quote, "A policy can be sound as strategy and a tactical disaster in its implementation. But in this case, the tactical disaster has helped vindicate the strategic decision." So he's basically sort of making the point that I was at least trying to make yesterday, which is that this was rotten to the core, right? Afghanistan was never going to be South Korea, where we could just have 30,000 troops there in perpetuity with like this light footprint. That was never going to work in Afghanistan. And even as painful as this exit has been, and I still think it was a botched exit that Joe Biden holds the bag on, the fact that the exit was so botched shows you that the whole thing was a house of cards to start with.
Carlo, there were reports yesterday, and I'm still so surprised at this. So of what you do, what those who are not basically subscribing to the Taliban's philosophy are doing, those that maybe support the previous government of Ghani, and they're protesting in the streets right now, even with the Taliban there. So this goes to show that this is going to be an intense situation about those who maybe are not going to be a part of the Taliban's government here. Where do they go? Do they stay in Afghanistan? Do they flee and go to Pakistan? Do they move somewhere else? Definitely something to watch. But I do want to talk about President.
Wait, just before you talk about Biden, that's an important point because the Taliban, for all of, I mean, I'm not saying they're like good or anything like that, but they are allowing people, Afghans with visas, to leave the country, and they're also allowing Americans. They're not interfering with the American evacuation at the airport right now.
Not yet. If you're at the airport, by the way, if you're at the airport, that's key.
Yes, but again, they don't want Americans staying there, so they're not going to get in the way of the U.S. evacuating Americans out of that country.
No, because they want them out as quickly as possible.
Yes, as far as Afghans go, I mean, right now they're trying to make a point about how, hey, we're going to let you leave if you want to leave. Again, I wouldn't hold, I wouldn't take too much with that, but it's just important to note that they are trying to get us out. They're not trying to keep us bogged down in there, right?
Totally. And on the topic of what's happening at the airport, President Biden did a big interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos last night, and he said that the U.S. would evacuate every American out of Afghanistan, even if that means staying beyond his self-imposed August 31st deadline to get out. In his first television interview since the fall of Kabul, Biden again defended the hasty withdrawal. He said that there was no way out of Afghanistan without chaos ensuing. And in terms of the politics and all this, Carlo, we were talking about this yesterday. How well does this poll? Well, the first poll is now starting to come out. President Biden's approval rating for the first time in his presidency has now fallen below 50%. That in the aftermath of the withdrawal in Afghanistan. The Real Clear Politics and the 538 polling average has him now at about 49%. We should note President Trump was always polling in the low 40s, so he's still higher than the former President Trump here. But this is significant given the fact that President Biden has always polled in the low to mid 50s. So the fact that he's below that is showing that this is really resonating with people.
Yeah, well, I think it's still too early to say, but I mean, this is important, as you said, and it's just sort of like a bad sign when you go below 50%. That sort of signals the honeymoon's over for a new president. It didn't used to be that way, but we're now so polarized that these polls don't actually move that much in either direction. So even when they do move a little bit, it's important. That said, he's down a point a week on the averages. Not that bad. However, there's a Reuters poll out that this morning has him down 7 points. So I don't know. I think we are going to start to see this ding him. But I also think, and we've heard from a few listeners, a couple guys DM me on Twitter that thinking that I was a little bit off base on me or just being so hard on Biden in terms of how the last few days in Afghanistan played out. And I think it's certainly possible that the media being us, but the media writ large, is sort of overstating the harm that this is doing to the president. What often happens, and has happened, I think you'll agree, Baker, during the Trump era, is that when a Democratic politician makes a big mistake, the quote unquote mainstream media just goes off, right? We go apoplectic on it. And the reason why that happens is sort of a way for the mainstream media to, I hate that term, by the way, the mainstream media. I don't even know why I'm saying it. You know what I mean? The CNNs of the world, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the MSNBC, they sort of go apoplectic on the president as a way to buy some street cred for being tough on both sides. And I think we may be seeing a little bit of that here.
The only other historical comparison I could do to any of this, and again, this could be completely different, we've heard reference to the fall of Saigon back in 1975 or so, 1975, 1976. That was not the thing that really ended Gerald Ford's presidency back in 1976. It was obviously what was happening with Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter and so many other different things. Not a lot of people talk about Saigon as one of the reasons why Gerald Ford lost. That's not to say that this time will be any different and could be different for Joe Biden this time around because, again, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow when it comes to the news. Just polling so far has indicated that the top priorities for Americans right now are COVID and the economy. And given the fact that the labor market's sort of a little bit of a mess, inflation is still playing a huge role in everybody's lives, and the fact that the Delta variant is now, basically front and center in all parts of our aspects of our lives now, I feel like that is going to be the thing that it's going to be whether or not Joe Biden gets reelected, more so than Afghanistan.
Oh, no. I think you're probably right. And I think that when it all comes down to COVID, until this freaking pandemic is behind us, everything flows out of that, both politically, economically, just everything, right? We cannot move on until this thing is contained.
Okay, so let's talk weather here, Carlo. Hurricane Grace is formed as the second hurricane of the Atlantic season. She's going to make landfall later today along the Yucatan near Cancun and Tulum. Two very nice places, by the way. That is a Category 1 storm. So this makes it just one of 3 storms that we're monitoring. The remnants, of course, of Tropical Storm Fred impacting the Northeast today as a rain event after drenching North Carolina, and Henry also churning out of the Atlantic near Bermuda. It is now expected to make a hard right that could cause some problems for New England late Sunday and early next week, Carlo.
I got plans on Saturday night for the first time, and I don't know how long, so this thing better not mess up this wedding that I'm going to. I'll tell you that right now.
Potentially it could.
Okay, well, I kid because people have it way worse than me, but you know what I mean. Anyway, just on the topic of the extreme weather, Northern California's Caldor Fire near Lake Tahoe. This is the latest one of these wildfires to just explode in size. This thing has grown nearly 50,000 acres in the last 24 hours. It wiped out parts of the town of Grizzly Flats up there in the Sierra Nevadas. Meanwhile, the Dixie Fire, which we've been talking about for a while, this thing has been going strong for more than a month. It's at 33% containment, so they're getting there slowly but surely. It has now achieved the distinction of becoming the first wildfire ever to burn clear across the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
Oh, so heartbreaking. And I've been reading stories of those who have been evacuated going to other towns, and then those towns, but now having to be evacuated as a result of that. The animals that are essentially losing all of their homes. And there's this story I saw on CNN of a bear cub who lost its mother in this wildfire, and it's basically looking for its mother. And so firefighters are trying to I know, it's awful. It's just awful stories. And all of the stuff in the fire season just breaks my heart. Carlo, I want to move on to what's happening with T-Mobile, because they are really under fire, because they have now confirmed a security breach that they say impacted 48 million people, the vast majority of whom, interestingly, are not even T-Mobile customers. The carrier says a database of first and last names, social security numbers, date of births, driver's license numbers, even addresses of current, former, and prospective customers, all was hacked and is now for sale on the dark web. Now, no financial information was compromised, thankfully, but we all know sensitive data stolen is plenty enough for hackers to engage in identity theft. The company is planning to proactively reach out to those affected. What I think made matters of this story worse, Carlo, is that T-Mobile didn't even know the hack happened until it was posted on an online forum that they had been hacked. T-Mobile didn't even know that it had happened until this forum posted about it, which I think is the most outrageous part of this story.
Well, I mean, the first thing I was wondering when I saw this come over, why does T-Mobile have a database of 40 million people who aren't its customers?
I know.
Like, I don't know. I've never interacted with T-Mobile, but they may have all of my social security number. I mean, it turns out, after doing a little bit of digging, this is actually fairly common. There's nothing against the law here, at least in the United States. It is against the law in the EU. You can just have data on American consumers. You can buy it, you can sell it, you can trade it, you can keep it for a rainy day. It's just astounding, really, when you think about it. And there's a push for something called data minimization. And again, this is something that's happening in the EU, where they take privacy much more seriously. But it's one of these things that seems like a no-brainer in terms of consumer protection. But we just don't take this kind of thing seriously in this country. I don't know why, with the exception of California. I have to say, California has rules against this stuff. But these hacks are always outrageous. But this one, especially for that reason that you mentioned, that you could not even have ever gone into a T-Mobile store and they could have your driver's license number that is now on the dark web. Why should the burden be on me to protect my identity from a company I've never even interacted with?
Carlo, you bring up so many great points, and this is why Democrats in Congress keep pushing for more data rules, when it comes to how much data that these companies essentially can have on all of us. I would have thought after the Equifax hack, things potentially would have changed, because that is like as top as it gets when you are dealing with basically your credit number here. I mean, that is like so significant, and nothing really changed there. And it seems like every year we have some sort of huge hack, be it from Target or from I think Wells Fargo had one. We have this one. There's just so many instances where things never change afterwards. So until the government decides to step in and do something here, we should just expect as consumers that this is going to happen all the time, and we should also expect that our data and our information is already out there.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. But the only reason politicians are going to start doing something and actually enacting a law like the one they have in the EU is if we get upset about it. And the problem is these hacks are so common now, like you said, that people are just like, oh, yeah, another hack. I've already assumed it's a lost cause at this point. My social security number is already on the dark web, so I don't care. But no, we should be outraged because it's a completely ridiculous. It's completely absurd. And the only way things are going to change is if consumers say to their elected representatives, you got to do something about this, guys.
So true. So true, Carlo. Yesterday, we had some great baby news yesterday. It was Mayor Pete and Chasten Buttigieg. Today, the baby news comes from Scarlett Johansson. Colin Jost has confirmed on Instagram that his wife has recently given birth to a baby boy. Now, this is where things get a little weird because they're calling him Cosmo. That's according to Colin Jost's Instagram account. It's, of course, the first for Jost, the second for Johansson. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Scarlett Johansson and Colin Jost to have a baby boy named Cosmo, but I also kind of don't believe them also at the same time. I believe they had a kid, but something about naming their kid Cosmo just seems like a joke that Colin Jost is setting up for us all to laugh at here.
Well, it's very funny in his Instagram. He was like, please give us privacy and direct all inquiries to inquiries. Jeez, I'm losing it today. He said, direct all inquiries to Michael Che, his Weekend Update co-host. I actually like that name, Cosmo. I think it's great too. Surprised by it.
And
I love it.
And all of the Seinfeld Instagram accounts that I follow are like going bananas over this. They're so excited about it. And look, I think it's a cool name. I think it's different. It's better than, Prince George or all these other ones that are out there. But again, with Colin Jost, I just don't know if he's kidding or not, because for all we know, it could be named Adam,
Right. Well, I also, I thought it was hectic when Becky gave birth, but imagine giving birth while you're also suing Disney for wage theft, right? That is stressful.
Not only that, we haven't even confirmed if Colin Jost is even returning to SNL next year. SNL and Lorne Michaels still doing the contract negotiations with Kate McKinnon and Cecily Strong and all these people. So who even knows if Colin Jost is returning? So yeah, that is a lot on their plates. Suing Disney, negotiating potentially your deal to return to SNL. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a kid named Cosmo.
I don't know. If I had a ScarJo and a baby, I wouldn't be going anywhere. No. Anyway, by the way, on this one thing, I thought this was interesting from the Hollywood Reporter. When Disney was blasting Scarlett Johansson in the press for her lawsuit over Black Widow, she was literally in labor with this baby.
Oh,
so
my
not
God,
a very
wow.
good look. From the House of Mouse over there.
By the way, and just one last note I'll say on that, every actor at Disney, including Emma Stone, has been watching what has been going on with Scarlett Johansson, and a lot of insiders believe that that's why Disney signed that deal with Emma Stone for the second Cruella fast, because they don't want to be on the wrong side with a lot of these A-list celebrities like they are right now with Scarlett Johansson.
I'm more inclined to think that she actually did something very brave in that lawsuit, which I didn't think in the beginning, but it's sort of becoming more obvious. I think that somebody had to do it, and somebody had to do it first, and she was the one to do it first.
My friends in Hollywood are all commending her for what she's doing, because there is so much money. I know you can make the argument that these celebrities make a ton of money anyway, but she potentially lost $50 million in this deal. So this is big for her.
Not even right. And that's the problem with these things, right? Because you're like, okay, this woman is already worth how much money? It feels so greedy. It feels so gross, just like we're in the middle of a pandemic. But what you're talking about is, breach of contract, which is like a real thing.
That's your money.
Anyway, before we go, Baker, I promised that we were going to do recommendations.
Oh, yes.
Last time I saw you in the office, which was, 10 years ago? No, it was like a month ago.
Okay, yes.
So I recommended two things. I recommended The White Lotus and the Woodstock 99 documentary, both of those on HBO. And I am told that you have completed both of your assignments now.
I have. Finally, a month late, Carlo. It took my husband to go upstate to leave me alone, so that way I could watch most of it. Except I did watch the Woodstock documentary with him, so I'll start with that. The Woodstock 99 documentary documentary on HBO Max, executive produced by Bill Simmons. A lot of people think there was just one Woodstock. There was actually 3 Woodstocks. The third one was the most ridiculous of all of them. You traditionally would think of Woodstock as this love and peaceful sort of symbolic moment in American history. The third Woodstock was nothing close to that. Instead of booking, Creedence Clearwater or, the Mamas and the Papas or the Grateful Dead, they booked Limp Bizkit, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, all these insane, Kid Rock, like all these insane hard rockers, and then it turned to mass chaos at the end because you have like all these like pumped up straight dudes burning down the festival at the end of the day. And I'm like, what do you expect when they're in the mosh pit for Metallica,
I actually thought that they were too hard on Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst on that documentary. Yeah, I'm not exactly like a Limp Bizkit apologist, but
who knew that?
Okay, anyway, we could talk about that documentary forever.
And by the way, White Lotus.
White Lotus. Are you done?
So good. It's so good with White Lotus. Jennifer Coolidge deserves every award in the world. I love Jennifer Coolidge.
Yes. So we have watched the finale. I'm prepared now to talk about it with anybody who wants to. My DMs are open. My email inbox is. Oh, don't email me about White Lotus.
Yeah, I was going to say, you'll get a response next month.
Yeah, you can. All right. Baker, always a pleasure, my brother. Thank you. We will see you, I believe, next week. You're going to be in for me for a little bit. Of course. And Jill's back tomorrow, which is Friday, which is also our YouTube live stream day. We'll do some Love, Hate, 8. And that's what you need to know for Thursday, August 19th.